Omar, how are you?
Hey, doing good.
Happy Monday. How was your weekend?
It was great. I went to Vandenberg, relaxed, used FSD. This new build is just something else. I mean, it's much faster, more assertive, and I've just been very impressed every time I've driven it.
All right. Uzi, how's it going?
Doing well. Seems like the dip buyers are out. I'm also going to California tomorrow, rest of the week. So try to take some photos of some Cybertrucks.
Where in California are you going?
Orange County.
Alexander, where are you at?
Okay, where I'm at?
Yeah, you're traveling again, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in Sweden. I visited a friend and we went out with his boat. But I want to take the opportunity to thank all the generous people that sold me Tesla stock today for $186. Thank you so much. You will be
Okay, thank
remembered.
you, Alexander. Your sound quality is a little low, so I'm going to move you down so you can focus on the road. Omar, are you buying the dip today?
Yeah, I did buy some overnight and the 180 range. It was just too good of a deal to pass up, when this thing was trading at 270 just a little while ago. And everything you're seeing with FSD, everything you're seeing with the product lineup, and then the fact that, you know, a sort of desperation and panic in the market increases pressure on the Fed to cut and to cut more aggressively. More people coming out saying the Fed needs a 50-point basis cut in September and that it should be followed up by a 50 basis point cut in the following meeting. So bad news is actually potentially an accelerant of rate cuts. So when you really look at it from that perspective and you say, okay, well, this is going to be, I think, an interest rate winner. This is, a company that has some really incredible AI technology here that's not being acknowledged, that I think is going to generate a lot more cash flow near term than investors think. Then it starts to look really attractive as an interest rate play as you see this sort of market panic around some things that are happening, a cooling economy.
Dallas, what do you think?
Yeah, I try not to get too hung up on the share price. I mean, it's fun to play the how low can you get in game, but most of my holdings are over 200 a share, and obviously definitely bought in a little more on today's dip. But long-term play, this is pennies compared to where we're going, 5-10 years plus. So excited for the future.
Okay, great. Thank you. West 6, welcome.
Hey, Yaman, what's up, everybody?
Nothing much. What's on your mind?
I'm just wondering what's ahead for, you have all these different things happening. The jobs market is kind of trending in the wrong direction. The stock market looks, like we already know, and the bonds market's kind of funny. We may have war in the Middle East accelerating. Kind of a slow and boring time. Nothing really happening right now.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. Salute everybody. We have 2 hours ahead of us, a lot to cover today. Grant, what do you make of this, the fact that the stock price recovered after being down 10% pre-market? Grant, are you there? Omar, can you see Grant as a speaker?
No.
Okay, maybe the AI is just too smart to not accept him. What do you think of the question? The stock went down 10%. I mean, quite a few stocks went down. NVIDIA was down about 13, 14%, I believe. And that seems to have reversed course a little bit because it's only down 4% today. NASDAQ is down 3%, Dow Jones 2%, S&P 500 3%.
Yeah.
Do you think the worst is behind us?
I I don't know. Probably not, but maybe. I mean, it sounds like we've really got some choppy waters ahead until the rates start coming down. I think that's what the market wants to see. Maybe some people are actually trying to kind of force the Fed's hand a little bit here by creating a panic. But it was funny to see bears get really excited overnight as some of these numbers came in. They said, "Ha ha, the market is down. Tesla is going to zero." And, you know, then things turned out to be a little better than expected. So, it's sort of interesting to see what the market is doing, but the market is misleading as often as it gives you a correct signal, right? I posted the famous quote by Ben Graham from The Intelligent Investor where he says, think about it like you've got this crazy neighbor, Mr. Market, who owns a partnership in the same business you do. And every day he comes, he offers some crazy price. The other day he's exuberant and he wants to buy Tesla from you for 270. Few weeks later he comes back and now he wants to buy it for only 185. You don't necessarily need to get caught up with the wild emotions of your neighbor, Mr. Market. You can trade with him as you see fit if you agree with what he's saying. But just as often as market prices give you a correct signal, they end up kind of doing the opposite of where that security is really headed in the medium term. So it's good to do your own analysis, understand the company, understand their financials, understand macro, and to try and figure out for yourself when the market
Yeah.
is, reasonable and when it's not.
All right. We have Grant on the speaker board. Before he takes us to a negative tone, I want to read our sponsor's message. Today's space is proudly sponsored by Joa, your go-to source for premium Tesla accessories. From innovative phone mounts to cutting-edge charging solutions, Joa offers everything you need to enhance your Tesla ownership experience. Don't miss out on a special offer for space listeners. Use the coupon code TSLA Live at checkout for an exclusive discount. You may use the link at the top of our screens to visit and explore the range of products designed to elevate your drive. Thank you, Joa, for supporting our Tesla community. Isn't that nice? And we have some great news before we go to Grant. We have our second sponsor. We have our second sponsor already signed up through the subscription. And we don't have a message for them just yet. They're working on a TSLA Live landing page. And then after that, I'm going to be reading probably both daily, every half hour or so is my plan. So let's go to Grant. Grant?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I don't know. I agree with what Omar said, generally speaking. It's difficult to know what's going to happen from here. The market was definitely down a ton at the open and has gotten back to what seems like a slightly more stable place. We'll be interested to see if the Fed does anything. I would personally, just low conviction guess would be that the market could move lower through October. But that's not based on much.
Okay. Ellie, let's switch topics gears for a little bit. Middle East, there's a lot going on there in the last 48 to 72 hours. Geopolitical risk in the Middle East is increasing. What's the latest from your area?
Yeah, hi, what's up? So we are on standby. We basically been told to expect some retaliation within the next 24 hours. That was 10 hours ago. So it might be interesting. The night might be interesting. So the foreign ministry of Iran invited some Russian officials. So they will be discussing who knows what. Some officials from the US will be coming to Israel to discuss who knows what. Iran apparently said to foreign countries not to fly above some countries, Israel, Iran, some other countries included. So it should be interesting. We will keep you updated.
Thank you, Ellie. Are you going to be taking any precaution tonight? Are you going to be sleeping at home or going to a shelter or anything of that sort?
I'm gonna take the journalism career a little bit more serious. So if something will happen, I will just take my camera and try to shoot some videos.
Well, be safe. Yeah, I hope you're safe, and thank you for the updates. Be safe. All right, Omar. Any words on what Ellie just talked about? Otherwise, we're going to go back to macro for now.
Yeah, it's certainly concerning, and you can understand why markets are spooked when you have a threat like Iran made to attack Israel, and with the US being an ally of Israel. And it's easy to imagine, if you kind of let your imagination run wild, it's spinning into some kind of world war or something. But with these types of geopolitical risks, sometimes they actually happen and sometimes they don't. So, Iran made the threat. They haven't done anything yet. Um, I think it would be extremely stupid for them to try and attack Israel and start a war with them. The consequences for Iran would be very hard on the Iranian people. So I'm hopeful that somehow war can be avoided, and this ends up being more of a scare than an actual new war that breaks out. But we'll have to see. I don't have any expert intelligence on what Iran is going to do.
Thank you. And when I look at the oil market, the oil prices are still pretty low. So I don't think the market is pricing in any sort of material acceleration in the near term. But we'll keep an eye on an ear. Ellie is our ear in the Middle East. Thank you, Ellie. All right, let's switch gears. Omar, do you think the Fed should do an emergency rate cut?
No, I think a September rate cut of 50 basis points or 25 basis points, I'd lean more on the side of 25, should be fine. The sky isn't falling. The economy is still pretty strong. Like, oh my God, we saw a little bit of weakness in the labor market. It's okay. People are fine. We have a lot of room for monetary stimulus. So I think there's still risks to both sides. And overall, I think Powell's done a pretty good job of this, as painful as it's been. If they start doing a 25 or 50 basis point cut in September, I think that'll be right on the money.
You see a little bit of a weakness in the employment market, but that's almost a 1% move higher in the unemployment rate, and it triggered the SOM rule. Grant, do you think there's going to be more to this weakness in the unemployment rate?
I don't know. I'm not a macro expert. I do think there was a positive. I think it was helped a little bit by a positive manufacturing report that came out today. I was watching CNBC this morning, but I can't act like I'm really an expert on any of these things.
Okay. Is there anything you want to talk about? Otherwise, I'm going to move you to listener mode.
I don't think that they'll do an emergency rate cut based on the way the markets have reacted the rest of the day. It just feels like a little unnecessary. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk some of the stuff, but I don't have an unemployment forecast, so your call.
Okay. Grant, do you think what would it take for Warren Buffett to buy Tesla shares?
I think the company would need to be growing earnings and valued at a tenth of what it is today. I mean, I think he also cares about the governance. I don't feel like Musk is really his kind of guy. I don't know the names of any CEOs in the Berkshire portfolio because they're just nose to the grindstone operators. They're not really out there looking for attention.
Omar, what do you think about that? What do you think it would take for Warren Buffett? I mean, most of us in this space, maybe not Grant, but think Tesla has a great future and it's undervalued today. We think that robotaxis and Optimus will change the world in the 5 to 10 year period. And he understands these things to a certain extent as well. Like, he's not ignorant about these things. Okay, Grant.
Like, I feel like we occasionally have this discussion. Is there another rumor that Buffett might be buying? I just think it's crazy, just full stop insane. I mean, he invested in Apple when it was at like 11x PE, not like 100x. It's just crazy to me that we even talk about this as a possibility. Like, is there a rumor or something substantiating this discussion?
Yeah. You know, before Buffett bought Apple, everyone said that it was crazy to talk about that too. And the fact is, at the time, most investors looked at Apple as a growth investment, and obviously Buffett is a value investor, and he has a a set of guidelines, 5 guidelines that he abides by when he picks stocks, and Apple wasn't really one of them. Apple was seen as stepping outside of his comfort zone. And today, still, after he sold half of his stake, it's still the biggest investment. And he made a lot of money owning Apple. So he can't step outside of his what people think as a Buffett investor, a value investment. So I don't think it's out of the question that he might also start buying shares in Tesla. I don't know if he's going to do it at these levels, but I think it's worthy of discussion at this point. Grant?
Yeah, I mean, I won't just belabor the point, but I do think he's made comments. I mean, obviously, he's made comments on a ton of industries and spaces and markets and companies. And I think he's talked in the past about how the airplane industry and the auto industry are both uniquely challenging. You know, if you look at the story of the 21st or 20th century and all of the innovation that took place between 1900 and 2000, a lot of what changed the way that people live, changed the way business works, everything had to do with innovations in transit, in planes and automobiles. But no one's really made money. Those companies are cyclical. They go up, they go down, they go broke. There have not been material equity gains to any one person as a result of the innovation that's taken place in those industries. I think he's been on the record as saying they are bad industries to invest in.
Okay. At the top of our screens is 3 questions that relates to Warren Buffett. Please reply to those questions with your views. One of those questions is, should Elon Musk take Warren Buffett on an FSD ride? And how would you convince Warren Buffett to buy Tesla stock? Let's go to Luce, get his word on it, and then Omar.
I honestly think Apple is the next Intel. And I think Warren Buffett did a great job selling the stock. I think Apple doesn't have any way to grow anymore. I think it's mismanagement, and yeah. If you want,
honestly, I don't think you would agree with any of those statements, right? It's still by far his biggest position, and way bigger than Bank of America. I think is the second position. Omar, a lot for you to cover there. The 3 questions at the top, and also Luce's comment on Apple.
Yeah, I think Apple's a great company. Obviously, it's Buffett's biggest holding. I mean, Warren Buffett isn't going to invest in Tesla. And I kind of agree with Grant. It's a little bit silly that it comes up so much. It's not really a good question for the Tesla bulls, because if that's our goal, that Buffett invests in Tesla, I mean, it's just never going to happen. And, I wonder how much do these people really know about Warren Buffett and who he is. I mean, he's a great investor, but there's many different types of investors, right? Not everybody is a tech investor who goes in and says this business could be doing this much in earnings someday, if this market becomes much bigger. That's not the kind of investor he is. He's a guy who looks at the balance sheet, looks at the P&L, and tries to figure out what's a great business that is overlooked, and he buys and he holds them for the long term.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think Tesla is a business that is overlooked, that will grow earnings over the longer term?
Well, the core elements of Tesla's business are still nascent. So, for example, you could say in, 2006, 2007, okay, Apple's a computer business, and look at their PC division earnings and the balance sheet that has arisen from years of making PCs. And you might say, this is a terrible business. And they have a 5% stake in it. You know, they're one fish in a big pond. But you wouldn't have seen, for example, the iPod business, the iPhone business like their wearables business, which really expanded the scope of the business from personal computers to many different types of devices that people have. And similarly, Tesla's at a place where people like Grant are looking at it and saying, hey, this is an automaker, and there's a nascent AI side of the business, energy side of the business, robotic side of the business that is not on the income statement. It's speculative, right? Warren Buffett's not the guy who's going to go, one day there's going to be a million optimists. No, he doesn't care about that stuff. He cares about what the business is already doing, what's real, what he can look at, right? One day when, let's say, there are millions of optimists and they're doing things and you can actually see it on the P&L, then maybe he would look at it the same way he did with Apple. And by the way, I think it was one of his staff who really came to him. He said for many years, I'm not a tech expert. I don't know what tech is going to fail and what tech is going to succeed. That's not me. I'm the guy who knows how to analyze the business's financial statements and figure out what's a great business to hold long term.
Do you agree with the following statement, Omar? That there is a price out there at which Warren Buffett would buy Tesla shares today?
At that price, you and I are homeless.
No, but hold on. Is a yes or no question? Do you
Of
agree
course.
that?
Of course.
Okay. What do you think is that price?
Gee, well, you'd have to see Tesla trading at a multiple that was, you know, reflecting pretty much the auto business alone. So, I think probably
I don't
below
know. I
$100
don't
billion,
know.
maybe.
Well, just remember he has his Berkshire Hathaway has a large companies in the energy business in multiple fronts of the energy sector. So he's very familiar with the energy business as well. And Tesla Energy is, producing in volume. It's growing really fast. It's no longer a venture capital type of investment. It's very profitable, and it has a long runway ahead of it. So you don't think Warren Buffett would be considering at least the Tesla Energy business?
I think that Jesus will return and make an FSD video in a Cybertruck before Berkshire invests in Tesla at 2024 financials.
Yeah, but you didn't answer my question. You don't think Warren Buffett would be looking at the Tesla Energy business and looking at the megapack margins, megapack growth rate, the potential beyond 2024?
I don't know. I think if I were him and I wanted to get into like the energy storage business, for example, I'd look at an energy storage player that had a great product that was undervalued, but could expand significantly with the infusion of additional capital.
Okay. Sawyer, welcome. How are you?
Hey guys, doing good. How about you?
Good. What do you think about this ongoing discussion? So I pinned at the top 3 questions. Do you think Warren Buffett, first of all, do you think there's a price out there at which even Warren Buffett would buy Tesla stock today?
No, I don't think there is, honestly. Even at like
How come?
75, I don't think he would get in.
Okay, how come?
I think, building off a little bit of what Omar said, I think Warren Buffett doesn't always have the best understanding of technology. And he does have a number 2 and number 3 at Berkshire that are younger and understand technology a little bit better. I think their names are Greg and I forget the other one. They help make the investment decisions at Berkshire. But, Warren, he owned a flip phone until 2020, and that's when he bought an iPhone for the first time. And I think he likes to invest in businesses that aren't going to be super volatile or are run by leaders that are really unpredictable. And I think that's what Elon Musk is, really unpredictable. We're fine with that, but I think someone like him that likes more steadiness, it would not be fine with that.
I personally think that you guys are deeply underestimating the man, arguably the greatest investor of all time. It's a shame, but
I think
I
that
think
Berkshire
today's
will take a stake in Tesla eventually, if and when these businesses that we discuss in the space actually pan out, and you can see them on the P&L. Like, if this company has a durable advantage in autonomous ride-sharing networks, and let's say they're posting regularly $50 billion to $100 billion in earnings, is he going to be able to ignore a company like that? Probably not. Nobody will.
If he does, I would think it'd be partially due to the influence of Greg or Ajit.
well, but you just moved from no, there he wants to if he does.
I don't think Warren himself would do it. I think if Warren were to take a step back in terms of the investment decisions, and Greg and Ajit were to be like the number one and number two guys there, then I think it's more likely.
Yeah, just an interesting fact here. Warren Buffett was on CNBC with Charlie Munger and Bill Gates in 2016 talking about robotaxis. So it's not like he doesn't think about these things at all. He actually said, I will bet, because back in 2016, 2017, obviously there was a lot of rumors around robotaxis taking over and everything. And he said, I will bet you in 10 years, they won't even make up, I forget what percent of the fleet he said, but he said a percentage. And, he was right. Uzi.
Oh no! So I just saw that Bill Gates was on the Berkshire Hathaway board, but he stepped away in 2020. So it's not that. I mean, if Warren was going to buy, he would have bought the 140 dip, in my opinion.
Okay, Luce.
So Buffett bought BYD, which didn't have great financials either. And when he went on to say that Tesla is bad, he was already deeply invested in BYD. So obviously there is his opinion was driven by that. So I think I agree with Yam.
Yeah, he's selling down his BYD stake. And Elon also said that if they don't change course, if BYD doesn't change course, they're going to be in trouble. And that probably applies to a lot of other legacy automakers as well. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to belabor the point, but if you guys want to share your views, you're welcome to request to speak or reply to one of the three questions at the top. Sawyer, what was the most important news of the last, say, week, you think?
I gotta look back. It's been a pretty slow news week, but I guess the Tesla's Cortex supercomputer cluster seems to be going along well. I like the name, by the way. And I think that a few months ago, I forget who said. I don't know if it was Elon or someone else at Tesla, but they said it would be up and running by August. So it sounds like it might be turned on pretty soon.
Yeah, 100,000 H100s, up from the 50,000 they guided for previously, is pretty material news.
What do you make of the name? Do you think it refers to Optimus Brain?
I didn't catch that. Did he have a name in the tweet?
Yeah, apparently it's called Cortex.
Yeah, I think it's the outer layer of your brain surfacer. I think it makes sense.
Okay, tonight, by the way, we have another AI space. This is our second AI space. I didn't publish the first one because there were some audio issues, but this one, we're going to talk about the Neuralink video with Sierra and Michelle. And anybody obviously is welcome to join. This is purely focused on AI and less kind of Tesla stuff, but more midterm, long-term AI topics. So that's going to be 8 p.m. Eastern time. Gianni.
Hey guys, I have two questions. One is, you reminded me of that Elon tweet regarding BYD when he thought they would be in trouble one day, and I wanted to know what the vulnerabilities or concerns are for BYD. That was my first question. And second question for Omar, on the 12.5.1 is incredible. I've been using it. What do you think it will be like from driver experience if you can get more specific? Like once they turn on that massive compute, what do you envision the experience like in the next year? Because that compute will be turned on pretty quickly, as I understand. That's it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, more compute means you can run more different experiments, train more models, train bigger models, train on higher resolution images. So it opens up a lot of options. Just to give you guys some context, they've got about 35,000 H100s in Palo Alto right now. So bringing on 50,000 to 100,000 H100s at the new Cortex facility in Texas would be more than doubling the amount of available compute they have. They would have more compute than even XAI at that point, right? So we're really talking about a massive amount of compute. And they're also building up Dojo at the same time. So, you may have noticed going from 12.3 to 12.5, where the driving just feels so much more lifelike, sort of higher fidelity to human driving. And that's enabled by the larger models that they were able to train, the 5 times larger model. So Elon has said the hardware 4 chip can handle a model that's even 8 times larger than that. So that's really what this expansion of compute is all about. Physically building out this data center directly translates into that more lifelike driving feel that you're seeing with 12.5.1.
Gianni, did you say you have 12.5.1 or .1.1?
12.5.1. Correct.
Okay. Okay. Omar, what's the difference between .1 and .1.1?
.1.1 is a little crazier. It's like pre-release software yet, so it's not out to everybody, just the early access testers, but it's like wild. Like sometimes it'll do moves that are like a little scary, but pull them off. Like it just has the assertiveness turned up one notch higher. And it's able to pull off some pretty stunning moves, I have to say.
Can you tell us about one of them?
Just like, it'll get off a freeway and it'll be like jam packed and it'll get all the way over like 4 lanes and make a right turn. And it'll just do it like so smoothly without jittering, without like any harsh braking, just like magic. Or you're on like the 405 and it's completely packed and there's no room to make a lane change and there's like 1 inch and it'll somehow get in there and make a lane change. And you're like, whoa, how did it do that? And just doing things like a human, getting out into the intersection and the light's yellow, it turns red, and previously FSD would just stop and get confused, because the light's red, but it just completes it and it drives a little bit faster because it sees that the light is turning red and goes and completes the turn really quickly. It's just so human like. Or, you're turning left and you don't have a left turn arrow. And, we're talking about Los Angeles here, just endless stream of cars coming. And there's a tiny little gap between one section of cars and the other section of cars. Old versions of the software would miss it. You'd just be waiting forever. It just jumps through that gap and does it. And you're like, whoa, I can't
Yeah,
believe it just did that.
that's awesome. I can't wait to try it at some point. Sawyer, a lot of people are wondering, when are you going to get your Tesla?
Whenever they come out with a new Y, that's my plan.
There's a
I'm just
Juniper with his name on it.
okay, great. Awesome. So you're waiting for that. Sawyer, we have quite a few subvented loan rate discounts going right now, both for Model 3 and Model Y. Can you give us a kind of maybe a roundup of all the deals that Tesla offering today?
Yeah, I actually did a post
Yeah, I
about
remember
this.
you posted about it a couple of days ago, right? And that
Let
was
me
a
bring
really
it up.
good list. Yeah.
All right, so we got quite a bit actually. This might be the most ever, honestly.
Right.
So we got 3 free months of supercharging if you take delivery of any model but a Cybertruck by August 15th. Free FSD transfer, of course, until September 30th. Take delivery by then. 1.99% Model Y financing rate. Got to take delivery by September 30th. Same thing, 1.99 for the Model 3 by September 30th. Excludes the Model 3 rear-wheel drive. Free paint options for the Model 3 Performance and seating layout option for the Model X all-wheel drive if you add FSD to your order. So you can get a free $6,500 seating option if you add FSD to your Model X order. And then finally,
And
just
that
the,
6-seat interior is sick, by the way.
yeah, and then $1,000 discount for military members and their spouses. No limit on that.
And let's not forget the EV point of sale credit, which is up for a referendum this November. I mean, these deals are so good. I just got one of these Model 3 Performances myself. It's so much of a better car. If you have any Model 3, this thing is so much nicer than any Model 3 they've ever made before. And having the hardware for, having the latest FSD hands-free, and you basically get free FSD. You get a month for free, or you can do free FSD transfer. You get low interest financing, which really brings down your monthly payment. And then on top of that, you can spend 3 months just driving wherever you want on FSD for free with free supercharging. It's awesome.
Okay, great. Let's go to Hustletown. Hustletown. Thank you, Sawyer.
I just had a question. I was curious if Omar, I know you like to be on assertive. Do you ever play with the other settings on the FSD?
Not really. You kind of need to be on assertive in California, but maybe I'll try average or chill sometime. In the past, it's been hard to kind of notice much of a difference. So I know it affects the auto speed, but I'm not sure how much else it affects.
When I used it in the East Coast, FSD in the past has been, even on the latest versions, it still can have a tendency to be hesitant. And I notice you have to be on sort of on basically everything, because if you're not, it's going to be even more hesitant.
I use chill, not chill. I use average because I figured that might be the typical setting of what a robotaxi would do. I'm in Southeast Texas, so average has been pretty good. But even on 12.5.1.1, I've noticed exactly what you're saying. This thing is ballsy. In fact,
Yeah.
I don't want to get us demonetized, but my goodness, what a set it has on it. So I was just
Yeah.
You can't get us demonetized because we are demonetized right now for the next week or so. So you can literally. Did you say all?
I did. I wanted
Why are
to
you
make this money.
demonetized?
It's not
Make
the
this
end of the
money.
world. It's not the end of the world. There's a bit of a technical issue, but I am on top of it, and the issue is solved. It's just going to take another week or so for it to work through the system. And YouTube monetization and memberships will be back online in about a week or so. In the meantime, the interview with Dirty Tesla is exclusive to the members that did sign up before that got stopped. And also, if you're a patron, you can watch the interview as well. All right.
This is why I've been telling you.
I know.
You
Okay.
need to run.
Listen, we don't have to worry about that right now. Let's go to, Omar, why is this called 12.5.1.1, not 12.5.2?
I don't know. Typically in software, the farther back the number is, the less important it is, right? So a .1.1 denotes a more minor change than a .1 to a .2.
Okay. Do you think when this goes out wide to, let's say, majority of the fleet, do you think it's going to be as aggressive, or do you think Tesla will dial the aggressiveness back a little bit?
I'm not sure if it'll ever go out to the fleet. My guess is it's the same model as 12.5.1, but it has that dog in it, you know? They kind of told it, okay, you can be a little bit crazier, take a little more risks. And they probably wanted to show that to the early access testers and have them see it, maybe gather some data on how it is. It does seem to have more critical interventions. So, for example, there's this one parking lot where it always gets in the left turn lane, and then it has to kind of switch over one lane to the right because there's a median and because it has to go straight instead of making a left turn. And so it would do that every time with 12.5. And then with this new build, it would go in the left turn lane, but instead of changing lanes to the right, it went to the left and drove on the wrong side of the road in the parking lot. And there was nobody there, so it wasn't, like a crash or anything, but obviously that's a mistake. And I have seen it do, I had one other takeover on the highway, whereas 12.5.1 was basically no takeover. So you are seeing a little more critical takeovers due to it being more assertive, but it's also still completing almost every drive with zero interventions. So overall, I like it. I like it being a little more assertive, even if there are more takeovers as a result. But I don't know if they'll actually push those settings to the broader fleet or not.
I saw your post, I believe it was last night. You said something about this month is going to be very exciting for FSD developments, that we're going to get, a wide, I forget the list. I think you had 4 items on it, but one of that was banish, reverse, and actually smart summon. Is that going out wide in August?
That's the plan, so they've been talking about smart summon for the last 2 years. So who knows when it'll actually be going out, but we are seeing a lot of signs that it's happening. We're seeing updates in the mobile app. We've seen employees testing it since 12.3. So all they need to do is flip the switch when they're ready to activate it, and it's going to go out. FSD will then be able to reverse, and you'll be able to have your car operate driverlessly within a parking lot while you're watching it. So, there's a ton of things they have planned. We'll see how many they actually get done. But this month, we're going to see FSD 12.5 for Hardware 3, which honestly, I think Hardware 3 customers are going to be stunned. They've all been crying about how Hardware 3 is dead. When they see 12.5 running on it, I think they will be stunned. The 5 times larger model makes a huge difference. FSD on the Cybertruck is supposed to be coming by mid this month. And in fact, we have seen Cybertrucks testing Chuck Cook's left. The 8S testers are using them and testing that left turn. So I believe that it is actually going to come. And people like apparently Gregor Truck has seen photos of the Cybertruck running FSD and that type of thing. So it's real, it's happening. Our long national nightmare of no autopilot on Cybertruck is almost over. So that's going to be exciting. Then we're going to see the highway stack go end to end sometime this month, which is going to be huge. You'd see like most of the takeovers you have or most of the interventions are all on the highway stack now. So taking that end to end, you'd expect to see a similar jump. And once that happens, we can begin attempting coast to coast drives. And it's really only a matter of time before that gets done, probably before the end of the year. And then, of course, we've got, AS and banish and reversing, which, is huge. I think when people see their Teslas operating driverlessly for the first time in a parking lot, it'll really click for them that this is happening. And everybody else in that parking lot who sees it is going to say, hey, where can I get one of those for myself?
You said there were updates on the mobile app that indicate to you that these things are coming soon. Can you elaborate on that part a little bit? What updates were made to the mobile app?
Yeah, sure. So, the Tesla mobile app is an app that you can download onto your phone, and you can look inside the code of the application and you can see things like sometimes you can see English text, right? Like for if the app is supposed to say, click here to activate Smart Summon, then you can often see in the code it says, click here to activate Smart Summon, and also translated into different languages. So we can see that they've been working on the Smart Summon screen for some time. The new Smart Summon screen is going to be not just the old one, they've updated it. They're now allowing you to see the live view from the Sentry Cam while you're in Smart Summon mode. So you can pull up the Smart Summon screen, you see the cameras from the car, you can make sure there's nothing there, as well as checking physically. And then you push the button and you have this sort of redesigned Smart Summon UI. And it uses the FSD model, drives driverlessly, and comes and finds you within the parking lot.
Thank you. We have other developments on Cybertruck too. I'm going to ask Sawyer about in a second, but let's get Luce's question first. Luce?
So I wanted to ask Omar. So Tesla will have to basically take the blame if anything goes wrong during smart summon, right? It's almost like it's L3 for that period.
No, this would still be a level 2 feature that requires human supervision. So you as the driver, when using Smart Summon, you need to be within eyesight of the car, and you need to look at the cameras on your phone. And the way it works is you hold down your finger, and if you see anything, let's say someone jumps in front of the car and it's not stopping or something, then you lift up your finger and the car stops.
Thank you, Omar. Sawyer, there was a recent post by the person running Cybertruck program that Tesla is testing faster charging speeds at certain stations. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So ever since Cybertruck delivery started, I certainly have heard from a lot of them in person even. And one of the biggest complaints about Cybertruck has been the really slow charging speeds. And for quite a while, Tesla's been installing these, I guess what people are calling them, supercharger version 3.5 posts. Tesla calls them V4 posts. And we've sort of been wondering, are they going to flip the switch on like faster charging on these or not? Or are these just going to be 250 kilowatt max charging speeds? But Wes Morrill, he's the lead Cybertruck engineer, and he said they're running a trial on a few different V3 stations, parentheses V4 cabinet plus V4 charge posts. It's not a bug. It looks like Tesla Tino, he got a max charging speed of 325 kilowatts, I think. It's sort of unclear like which cabinets they're testing. So I don't know if they'll share a list or not that people can roll up to. But this is great news for Cybertruck owners because the slower charging speeds has been a big complaint for some people.
Omar, would you like to say a few words about this? I know you tested, obviously, you charged your Cybertruck a bunch of times. How do you feel about this news?
Yeah, I think it's great news. The Cybertruck is an amazing road tripper. So, I went to Vandenberg to see a launch this weekend, and it was a 3-hour drive both ways. I took the Cybertruck, and I always take the Cybertruck for long road trips. I've put a ton of miles on it, even though it doesn't have FSD, and even though it charges slower than the other Teslas, it's still a really good road tripper. And a lot of the complaints about supercharging are actually exaggerated because the Cybertruck can charge really, really fast from like 10 to 50%. So that initial part in the battery, it's like boom, like you wouldn't like really, really quick. And then you kind of usually just use that part of the battery and get back on the road. When people quote the charging time to 100%, you're rarely actually, charging at 100%. I mean, maybe if you're towing or something, then you might have to wait over an hour. But for most use cases, the trip planner plans you similar 15 to 30-minute stops, just like any other Tesla. And the other thing that people don't realize is that the Cybertruck actually supports both 800 volt and 400 volt charging. So all the previous Teslas are 400 volt, and they support charging from the supercharger at 400 volts. The Cybertruck has a special pack configuration that allows it to charge at either 400 volts or 800 volts. And it supports a, higher power as well. So we haven't even seen the full power of the Cybertruck with like a full-on V4 supercharger charging at 800 volts. That should allow it to be much faster. So I believe the fastest charging rate at a V3 supercharger that's 250 kilowatts is about 600 something miles an hour. Whereas with some of these new upgrades, it can do 800 miles an hour at peak speeds. So up to, a third faster at peak speeds. So as these get out, it is going to be faster charging times for the Cybertruck, which is great, and for any other future 800 volt vehicles. And, I just think it's funny when there was these stories about the supercharger team being let go. They said, "Oh, now Cybertruck's never going to get V4 charging. They're never going to deploy the 800 volt." That, of course, turned out to not be true.
Okay, I have a question for Sawyer in a second, but let's get Wessex's words real quick. Wessex.
Hey, Yama, thanks. Yeah, I found it interesting. I have a Cybertruck and I also have a Model S. It's an older one, 2017. And I have a Tesla controller in my garage. And the Model S charges at 72 amps, but the Cybertruck only charges at 48 amps. And I'm wondering if anybody's heard anything about that potentially changing.
Actually, the new Model S's now only charge at 48 volts, 48 amps as well. So they've made that change across their lineup. 48 amps is the max that they do. And that was just primarily aimed at cost reduction.
Okay, great. So, any other Cybertruck news before we change topics?
No, last thing I'll say is I think V3 superchargers came out in 2019 and they peaked at 250 kilowatts. So this is like the first charging speed bump we've seen on Tesla's network in 5 years, excluding the Tesla semi mega chargers, of course. And a few months ago, Lars Moravy, vice president of vehicle engineering at Tesla, he said that the Cybertruck should be able to achieve 350 kilowatt. So it's possible Tesla's just not bumping it all the way up to that just to be safe for now. But probably pretty soon here. Sounds like we'll get even higher speeds.
All right. So, your question for you. So, tomorrow, Rivian is going to announce earnings. Do you have any expectations for the company? Do you still feel confident that they're going to survive the next few years? They're going to be around a few years from today.
I am confident that I think it's going to be a rough quarter just because there's sort of been retooling for the introduction of their second generation R1 models. And they said they've cut off quite a bit of expense from those, but we won't really see the result of that until, earnings for later this year. We should get more insight into the $5 billion VW deal that they had a month or two ago. So I'm interested to hear more about that. But I think the gross margin is still going to be tough. I still probably think they're going to be losing, $35,000-$40,000 per vehicle delivered would be my guess, because their volumes just aren't where they need to be still.
What would change your mind during tomorrow's earnings release or earnings call? What would change your mind that the future of Rivian may not be as positive as you believe?
If we saw a reduction in demand, that would concern me, because to be able to be profitable, you need to reach economies of scale. And even if you bring down costs a lot, which they've done in the second generation, it's not enough. You still need much higher volume to be able to take advantage of that. So if they don't have demand, then I would be very concerned.
Okay. Omar, do you still have your put position on Rivian?
I do, and it's in the money now again. So sometimes patience pays off.
Are you holding on to it, and did you sell your shares?
I am holding on to it because I believe the market has not yet woken up fully to the reality that this deal with Volkswagen was not a positive event. This is a highly dilutive capital raise, and I see no indication that the business is going to be able to sustain itself. No indication that the business is going to be able to sustain itself anytime soon, especially not with them ramping up R2, let alone the R1 product line. And they're going to need a lot more dilutive capital raises. So the company's going to be cash challenged, and common stock investors are going to continue to get diluted. Normally in the market, that's a bad thing. The stock goes down. In their case, the stock went up.
So, any comments around that?
No, I think you covered it.
Omar, do you think the company will be around? That it will be able to raise money, that even though it may be dilutive raises, it will still be around?
I think the brand is loved, and my base expectation would be that it stays around. Depending on the market performance of Rivian, this deal that they've already announced to invest $5 billion in the company could end up with them owning a majority stake in the company if the company doesn't perform well.
Interesting times indeed. West 6, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I've got some Cybertruck information that may be interesting to learn. But if you want to circle back to that later, that's fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm only saying this because it's relevant. I started the Memphis Tesla Owners Club, and we have a certified collision company here in town. The guy that runs it, he's a Tesla owner, and he's super passionate about Tesla. And he posted something in our group that I thought was really interesting. I'm just going to read it if you don't mind. It's not too long at all.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. It says, out of the 150 Tesla approved shops in our region, Icon EV Collision, that company, is one of 15 handpicked shops that will be Cybertruck approved. Our first set of tools arrived this morning. This is a few days ago. We're wrapping up training this week on the Cybertruck and new Model 3. The Tesla training goes through every inch of this truck. The way this truck is built is incredible. As you may already know, my admiration for the engineers at Tesla is at an all-time high. And here's an interesting thing that's about to come. It says, hopefully nothing ever happens to your Cybertruck, but we're here just in case, from scratch repair, collision repair, accessories, and paint. And they said, yes, we're going to paint them too. I thought that was super interesting. I don't know if Omar or Sawyer, anybody else has heard about official paint on the Cybertruck or anything along those lines, but that was like, wow. So I have a question into him, and if I get a reply while we're talking or later in the week, I'll let you guys know what he says, but I'm trying to get some clarification about the painting.
Thank you. Omar or Sawyer, any clarification that you may be aware of?
No.
No, haven't heard anything.
Interesting. Well, I guess Wessex we'll wait to hear from you. Thank you very much for bringing that up. All right. Any other Cybertruck questions, comments? Please request to speak. Otherwise, I want to get, let's see, Omar's thoughts on what happened this morning pre-market, overnight, really, Sunday night. Markets plunged. There were a few things that kind of came in together. Tesla was down double digits pre-market at some point. And then markets open, and the online trading firms limited access, whether it was intentional or not. It was kind of interesting that it all happened simultaneously. Several online trading platforms, people couldn't log into their accounts. Omar, what are your thoughts on what happened with those trading firms?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked enough in it to have a strong opinion, but I would just describe what happened as a market panic. And you can look at the history of market panics through the generations. They all have the same sort of qualities. So this was kind of unexpected, but when there's a huge sort of downturn for any reason, geopolitical risk, what's happening in the Japanese economy, concerns about the US economy entering a recession, sometimes they can just build off themselves. And when you just have this insane bull market like we've been having, all of this AI hype, and then things start to move in the other direction, sometimes you can get a market panic event like what we saw today.
Okay. So you don't, okay. I thought maybe, this is 8, 9 firms. I was getting replies on messages from my followers during that time. People panicked quite a bit. And, some of these people wanted to buy the dip and they weren't basically allowed to. And we
Yeah,
don't
I
have
haven't
any
really heard
information.
about this. This is the first I'm hearing of it.
Well, come to TSLA Live to learn your news. Luce.
So if I can say things how they are, it's the same thing. It's the same that happened back during the pandemic, that they altered the market multiple times. It's because of the algos. If the algos go crazy, everybody loses money, and the market is rigged against you in the short term. There is no way to beat it.
Yeah, that's the market we're in. It's so true. Just LLM trading. That's a lot of what's happening these days.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the carry trade? How much do you guys want to go into macro stuff?
Well, I think it's certainly relevant. I don't know that I know that much about macro or what's going on to be able to say anything that informed, but it probably is an important thing for us all to learn about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll note is that this morning, Jeremy Siegel on CNBC said that he is calling for a 75 basis point emergency rate cut by the Fed, and an indication that there will be another 75 basis point rate cut in September. So this is very aggressive. That would be very aggressive. Most of the market do not believe that an emergency rate cut is necessary, and some even believe that it would worsen things. And that crowd, the later crowd, believes that the reason why the markets are plunging is the reversal, the unwinding of the carry trade. The carry trade. So that depends primarily on the rate differential, interest rate differential between the two central banks, Bank of Japan and the Federal Reserve. And the Fed cutting rates would narrow that rate differential further. I think that it's an interesting point to keep an eye on it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's just kind of putting it out there on our radars. I'm going to be reading more about this, and I follow these things under the account Macro Analyst, who is the co-host, so you can follow that account if you're interested in it. All right. I mean, I think it's like I think today's market volatility should not be dismissed. VIX surged above 65 from as low as 23 as of Friday. So that's a massive move in one day. And 65 would be third highest following Lehman Brothers collapse and also the COVID scare. So, I don't think the worst is behind us just yet, but I don't know how bad it's going to get because, the question is there a looming credit event out there? I'm not sure. I don't know. But if you remember back to 2008, people dismissed the early on before Bear Stearns collapsed. People dismissed these things too. So we'll see how it goes. Omar, do you think there will be a major credit event in the next 12 months? What would you do if you're the Federal Reserve Chair today?
Well, I don't think it's really the Fed's style to overreact to a market panic. They're going to stay the course. I think a 25 or 50 basis point cut is fine. I mean, you're already seeing deflation in many parts of the world, certainly in China. You're already seeing credit crises, for example, in the Chinese banking sector. So I think the market's worries are founded. I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, what happens if the Fed doesn't cut soon? This could start to get very bad. But, you know, I certainly don't think the market movements we're seeing should be dismissed, but it kind of makes me feel good that we have a pretext for a rate cut, right? The sort of Overton window has shifted. Now, instead of should the Fed cut or should it not cut, the discussion is now should they cut 25 basis points or 50 basis points or even 75 basis points? So I think we're moving closer to the end of this tightening cycle. And as soon as next month, we could see a cut, which makes me excited despite the volatility. I mean, this is one of the biggest spikes in VIX in decades. I think one of the top five.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is interesting. I mean, it's shocking how fast the rhetoric changed and volatility increased in a matter of hours, really. And Robinhood suspended 24-hour trading last night, which is also interesting. Yeah, quite the
Yeah.
change.
The 24-hour trading strikes me as something that's really easy to manipulate because of the low volume. And it's not even as regulated as like, NASDAQ's or the NYSE's pre-market, right? It's just like some, Robinhood just like came up with this itself. It's very limited, yet at the same time, it's highly visible. So if you were to try and manipulate the market, like I would be making huge trades on the Robinhood overnight market, and then you sort of, set that expectation for pricing in the morning, and there may have been some of that happening, which is why they suspended trading.
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by Joa Life. The link to get 5% of your purchases is at the top of your screens. Thank you very much, everybody. And good news, we have our second sponsor. We're working on how to approach that, and it's going to come in the next few days. We have Henry coming up. I see Machine in the crowd. If he wants to come up and talk some macro or other stocks, he's welcome to do so. Henry, how's it going?
It's going well, Yaman. How are you?
I'm good. What did you think of? I mean, this is the first time we're talking since Tesla results. I know you were very passionate about Tesla accounting a certain way that didn't quite pan out.
It did not.
Right. What do you think about that?
I was a little upset about that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't blame you.
I
Yeah.
really thought that they could. I showed you the PwC.
Well, I think we're probably time to move on from that, right? You agree? Okay.
Yeah.
So what's on your mind?
Yeah. No. I wanted to ask you actually. Who do you think makes a move first on this yen carry trade? The Federal Reserve, the Bank of Japan. What moves can they possibly make? And are they gonna get it right?
Yeah, I actually don't really follow this topic that much because I don't think it is the primary reason why we had this market volatility this morning. I think, the fact is inflation is declining quite fast. We have a two handle on many inflation metrics. The inflation expectations, market-based inflation expectations have plunged after the unemployment report. So they're looking pretty healthy too. And yet we have a 5 3/8 federal funds rate. So the real interest rate is about 300 basis points, which is incredible given how much progress has been made on the inflation front. And now we have unemployment rate rising quite a bit too. I mean, 0.9% increase in the unemployment rate has never happened until after a recession started. Okay. Now, granted, this is coming from very low rates, but still, nobody was expecting an increase to 4.3% U3 unemployment rate last Friday. Even Jeffrey Gundlach, who is known for his kind of bearish stance on these things, if you listen to his interview on Wednesday, which I published on the Macro Analyst, the relevant 10-second, 20-second section under the Macro Analyst account, if you listen to that, even he wasn't expecting 4.3 rate on Friday that came out. So the fact that unemployment is rising faster than even the bearish takes is, I think, something that people should kind of keep in mind. And add on top of that, the fact that the Fed still hasn't moved on these rates is wild to me. But I'm open to other views. If somebody wants to come up and share their take on these things, they're welcome to do so. It's just that if, it's quite a volatile time. Omar, I want to ask you one of the questions I asked my followers this morning. Do you think Tesla stock could be viewed as a bit of a safe haven in a recessionary period?
No.
Tell me more.
Well, cars are cyclical purchases. They tend to sell more when the economy's good and sell less when the economy's bad. When the economy's bad, when you lose your job, for example, or, just generally if people around you aren't doing well, it's easy to put off a new car purchase by using your old car for longer, taking an Uber, taking a bus, right? It's a purchase that's sort of easy to defer, right? It's an expense you can put off. Okay, let's, get the new car next year after I get my new job or whatever. So typically when there's a recession, sales fall for car companies.
Well, again, back to our earlier discussion in this space, there's also the Tesla energy aspect that is fast growing revenues. We have visibility into a year, 2 years out, as Sawyer frequently points out in his posts, that Tesla is signing up major contracts. It's highly profitable, even more profitable than the automotive business. I mean, does that not play a role? In a recession, utility stocks tend to do well because of their stability. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, the energy business is not cyclical, but it's also still small compared to the auto business. So it's becoming increasingly more material. But the auto business, I think, is still going to be probably what people look at more, where that's going to have the greatest impact. So energy, that's good, makes the business less cyclical. I think you can argue that AI is less cyclical and kind of a secular trend just because it's new, right? So times are good, times are bad. You might want a new technology more than, just upgrading to a new car. So I think you could say those things make the business less cyclical, but obviously the auto business is still the core of the business. That's what people know the most. It generates the most earnings, and that would obviously be impacted by a recession.
Sawyer, what do you think? Do you believe that there's a recession coming in the near term? And if so, do you think Tesla stock will be impacted like most other stocks?
I don't know about a recession coming, but if there were one, Tesla would be negatively affected, just considering the vast majority of the revenue comes from vehicle sales, which are very sensitive to rate hikes, recessionary times, whatever you name it. Um, as I think Omar's right in that, even though that the Tesla energy side of the business isn't really as sensitive to recessionary times as the automotive business, it's just too small of a bottom line and top line contributor to the overall business to be considered the whole business, the whole company to be recession proof. So maybe that'll change over time, and as optimists and other things come into play, that could change too. But as of right now, I think the auto business makes up too big of a portion to consider it recessionary proof.
Interesting. Okay. Omar, since you both mentioned Optimus, let's switch to that topic. Tesla plans to do thousands of Optimus in its factories doing useful things by next year. What do you think has to happen for Optimus to be incorporated into Tesla's market capitalization? And also, we have some news from Figure AI coming out with their second version 2 of their robot. What do you expect to hear from them?
Well, I think the robotics market is a huge emerging market. It's difficult to put a market cap on something that's so nascent, right? Once we have something that's actually sold, once we have the price, once we can maybe determine what the size of the market is at that price, then you start to be able to do some expectations of what cash flows the business could see in the future. Right now, it's hard to say even when a product will be sold. So you have to do a little guessing, and there's not a lot to work with at this stage. But it's a huge market, that's for sure. I think Tesla's going to be the leader in it just because of what I'm seeing with FSD. The driving movements are so lifelike, so good now, and it's able to do it so often without making a single mistake. Drive you for an hour just perfect, no notes. That you just look at it and you think, okay, they're going to be really good in robotics too. Doing those movements, doing it like a human, not making any mistakes, not dropping the cup of coffee. Clearly, these guys have the tools to develop models like that. So I think that's really exciting. And, just listening to Elon talk on the Lex podcast this past week about Optimus and how they're redesigning the hands. He's like 50% of the engineering has gone into the hands. the actuators aren't in the hands now, they're in the forearm, and we have little strings, kind of like puppet strings that kind of, pull the fingers, and we have different sized fingers. So I think it's going to be really huge. As for Figure, you know, I'm not sure what happened to the Figure 1. I guess they're never going to release that. It's been killed by the Figure 2. I'm very skeptical of Brett Adcock and his team. Their previous company, Archer Aviation, failed to ever launch a product before they left the company. And, he seems to be more good at hyping things than really figuring out how to make a real business. So, I think he gets a little too much credit. He made this OpenAI announcement. Oh, we're, integrating with ChatGPT, when it really seemed like a pretty superficial integration rather than a deep integration of the model and the robot. Most people can't really tell the difference, of course, but you know, he's given a little Trevor Milton. I'm not saying he's a fraud, but
Dude,
there's
you took
reasons.
you took the words out of my mouth because that was literally my next question. I was just Googling the name of the founder of Nikola Beckett because I couldn't. So you think there are parallels to Nikola and Trevor Milton here?
I mean, I don't want to necessarily go that far. I'm not saying he's a fraud. I just think there's reasons to be skeptical that he can build a real major robotics business when you've got Chinese startups, you got companies like Tesla, you got companies like Boston Dynamics. I think he's got a lot to prove, and he's never built a real business before. So if he does it with Figure, that would be the first time.
Machine, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are
was
you?
the chicken today?
Well, I haven't had it yet. I did do
Wow.
unlike the rest of you, I did actually get outside already and do a nice trail run. 9 miles, 2,000 feet, shirtless, sweaty. I mean, you might be so jealous. I should have taken an Instagram photo. And I will.
How often do you look at my Instagram? Be honest.
I
How many
never,
times a day?
never.
Sure.
The only thing I like on Instagram is to see Olympic videos and people doing stupid things in their cars. That's basically what my feed looks like. And I mean, like crashing their cars and all that.
What do you think about Figure AI news? And Omar said, he's not calling this guy a fraud, but kind of giving a bit more like Trevor Milton vibes here.
Well, I just gave the funny emoticon because obviously I don't know enough about him, but he has started up some other companies and made exits. So like, I'm not saying those companies are super successful. I think not Archer.
You talking about Archer Aviation?
Yeah.
Have you been in one of their flying vehicles lately?
So
they went public via SPAC. That was
Yeah.
the exit. A SPAC bought them.
Well,
you checked out their stock?
I have not, and I'm not saying he's successful entrepreneur in terms of the actual business. My point is, I think he's at least one step up above Trevor Milton, your good friend, person you've sat in a room with, and
Trevor
chatted.
Milton did not get fired from Nikola until basically after he was charged with fraud. Archer got bought out by the SPAC, and the guys who run the SPAC pushed him out of the company. There was some major disagreement. And then he took some of the team that got pushed out of the company and he started Figure, which, by the way, was started 1 year after the Optimus unveil. Kind of bandwagoning a little bit there.
I fully agree. There's a lot of questionable, reason to question. I would just say, building a hydrogen fuel cell semi truck, I believe, is a harder, more capital intense operation than creating a robot. And the competition there, like, there's going to be competition. I don't know if they're going to succeed. I'm just saying the barriers to entry are lower, so there's a better chance they succeed. And I really wouldn't bet against someone with cock in their name.
How is this guy, and maybe he could prove me wrong, okay? And I'll just totally eat my words and say I can't believe I doubted this guy, but how is this guy going to mass produce millions of robots and build a multi-billion-dollar training cluster with 100,000, 200,000 H100s to train the foundation models necessary to make this a product? I don't see it.
He's going to have to partner with NVIDIA or something and massively dilute his shareholders. That's probably the only way.
Well, he's already partnered with NVIDIA, right? And Omar, just to kind of argue the other side for devil's advocate purposes here, so we have a balanced discussion. They announced partnership with BMW to test their robots in BMW production line.
Yeah, give me a call when that's up, okay? If they do that, I'll be genuinely impressed. That would be genuinely impressive. But this is
Okay,
what
so
I'm saying, like,
you're saying if Figure AI puts 1,000 robots in the BMW production line, then you will change your view on the company.
absolutely, that would be a stunning achievement to have 1,000 robots on the production line and they're actually doing the job and they're not messing up and causing quality issues. That would be a huge breakthrough in humanoid robotics. And this is what I'm saying is, you know, this is why he's giving Trevor Milton a little bit, because you have these announcements and it's a nice announcement. It sounds great, but can they actually do it? If they can, then yes, they're absolutely a player in robotics, but it's a little bit harder than it sounds.
Alexander?
Yeah, I watched like new simulation of the Figure 2, and it seems to me that they went from die-casted aluminium to magnesium alloy because the parts are coated, and that's actually lighter than aluminium.
Alexander, what percent probability do you assign to Figure AI putting 1,000 robots on the BMW production line, say in the next 5 years?
80%.
80%. Wow. Machine?
Wow. I've never heard a Swede act so positive about anything before. For you to say definitively, I mean, this is only because, Swedes love Germans because their gobbledygook language is kind of similar. And you think BMW is going to be some massively successful company. It's possible. I think not in the terms of like Figure AI is this hugely successful company might do it. Like maybe they get sold out for parts and eventually those robots get produced and maybe that gets on BMW's line. Like I could see it happening, like a 20% chance. But I definitely wouldn't be so confident as a Swede.
And you have experience with the Swedes, right? Machine in a commercial? Yeah.
I have, yes. And, I lived in Sweden and I understand. Unlike these Olympic broadcasters just absolutely mangling Swedish names. This Swedish
and the Turk. Oh my gosh, it's
you
so
know
bad.
this
And the Turkish names too.
you swim, right? So you know the Swedish
Yeah.
swimmer Sarah. They call her Sarah Soistrom. Her name, and I'm still gonna hack it, is Sarah Hustrom. Good luck trying to do that, Americans. Good luck trying to say it.
Just because I swam 2 decades ago doesn't mean I know every swimmer on the Olympic team. Alexander?
Yeah, on like machine, I haven't had so many father figures in my life, so maybe that's why I'm so positive. I don't know.
Okay. Wessex.
Yeah, to me, this company makes me think of, or is more similar to Arcimoto than necessarily Nikola. And in a way, because it seems like, I'm not saying Arcimoto was good at marketing. They were quite fortunate that they kind of came on the scene in 2020 when people were just dying for another EV play. But this company really seems good at marketing and Arcimoto probably created, and I don't want to focus too much on that, but probably created about 1,000 vehicles. And at some point, people figured out that the value wasn't there. It was overpriced, and the market really just wasn't capable of. They couldn't scale. And I think the same thing is going to happen to Figure and other companies, while at the same time Tesla can scale by providing the right value. So I think there's a lot of similarities.
Omar Alexander says 80% probability of Figure putting 1,000 robots on the BMW production line in the next 5 years. Machine says 20% probability. Where are you?
Yeah, I'm probably closer to Machine there. I mean, I think that the probability that within the next 5 years, someone produces a robot that can go onto a production line is high. If Figure can survive long enough, the technology will come to exist and they can take advantage of it. But the chance that they have the best solution that BMW actually wants to put on their factory floor at the lowest cost, and they can supply as many units and they have the best model, like, these deals fall apart all the time. These companies make these deals, and so often plans change, especially in these things where it takes a long time for the technology to be developed. Who knows what the market's going to look like in a few years? Let's say that BMW is making their own robot in a few years, or Boston Dynamics has a great robot that's cheap, or Tesla does. You're not necessarily just going to say, okay, let's buy these crappy robots from Figure just because we made some, like, deal with them 5 years ago. You're going to go with the best solution. And, I think there will inevitably be robots on the BMW production line, humanoid robots even. I'm just not sure that they're from Figure. So I'm probably closer to Machine's 20% on that.
Okay. Machine, how does it make you feel inside that Omar agreed with you?
Honestly, it was a little shocking at first, and then brought a little warmth to my stomach and my nether regions too.
Okay.
But what really,
I'm not going to ask you to elaborate on that, but go ahead. Well, really what?
well, I don't know. Did you guys hear the stock market went down today? I don't know if you guys talked about that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. That was my next question for you. So we talked earlier in this space about it, and I've been on macro-related spaces as well, kind of trying to better understand what's happening. Obviously the markets recovered quite a bit throughout the day. Do you think the worst is behind us?
I don't know for sure. Obviously, this is all speculation. It was interesting talk about what's happening with the Japanese yen. That probably contributed some. I think that's what you maybe thought, in terms of people leveraging and borrowing money in yen because it's interest free, and now it's not, and so they're pulling out. That makes sense somewhat. There's just fear from the jobs report. I think it might be to try to shake out retail sellers too, though. And so my initial reaction, thinking last night as we heard this news, was I think it's going to correct. It's going to correct back up, at least temporarily. That doesn't mean over the next few months that it's not going to go lower. I'm not really sure, because it's still what still matters ultimately is earnings and forecasted earnings growth. And in a recession, you could certainly see a lot of companies having to revise earnings down or forward earnings. And so then that certainly would bring the stock market down. However, if you think about some companies like NVIDIA, I don't know. Like, I feel like they could just keep going up. If they're still putting out profits and their forecast is great, like, why not? So I'm feeling fine about it either way, because I'm under leveraged.
You're kind of just like talking outside of both sides of your mouth right now. So I want to kind of push you a little bit and say, was it Thursday or Friday you talked about writing puts? When did you write puts on Tesla?
Yeah, I mean,
did you write puts on Thursday or Friday?
Friday.
And no. I think it was Thursday.
It's so funny.
I think it was Thursday, and you said, I don't think we're gonna go down more than 5%. And literally the next day, the stock goes down 10%. How do you do this amazing?
That's
timing?
pretty bad, but it's fine because I'm selling cash secured puts. And I think your audience, including Omar, of course, the worst person to prognosticate and retweet things about this because his followers are very, very stupid. And he's tweeting at me about my dumb put selling, which is bullish, by the way. I don't think people understand it's less leverage than owning the stock. So congrats, the stock went down, all you Tesla shareholders. Ha ha ha, machine. You lost money.
So
You lost
where
less money than
where are
we
you at?
did.
Did you end up buying the shares now?
No, it's not. The one set expires next week, so I probably will let it, assuming that it
Oh wow.
stays in the money.
Okay.
I'll probably let it convert to shares.
Okay.
I
So
added.
so that means you believe, generally speaking, you believe that it will not, if you're holding on to your short put options today, that implies to me that you don't believe it will get much, much worse from here. It may go down a bit more, but you believe this stock is worth holding at these levels.
Yeah, I mean, it may go down to 170s, maybe even 150s, like worst case, but it would be a very good buy at those prices. So I feel like at this price, long term, it's a buy, even just because of FSD as an L2, the revenue subscription values that's going to contribute in a few years from now. Not dealing with options on this, right? Just stock. There's going to be volatility. But if you look at that valuation, I believe the stock will be, at least 50% higher a few years from now. So yeah, I'm willing to hold those shares. This is just a nibble right now, and if it goes
Wow,
down more,
you are turning into a bull.
well,
Amazing.
it's
I
just.
did not think I would see this day, but you are becoming a bull again.
I mean, I think the main thing that did it is revisiting my forecast for FSD subscription revenue. Even just worst case as an L2 assist, when the fleet gets 5 million, 6, 7 to 10 million cars annually, what percent of the take rate and how much will people be willing to pay, and what would be the take home revenue, estimate margins and all that, and coming up with a valuation that I think supports that would contribute. I have to remember my calculation, but a few hundred billion in valuation. And that really puts a floor on how low the stock could ever go in the future. That's the one thing that's changed.
Yeah, and we should go do a ride with 12.5.1.1 this week, machine, because it's the new 5 times larger model, and you can really feel the difference. I remember last time with 12.4, you were like, it's hard to really tell the difference. I think you'll be able to tell the difference with this one in the 5 times larger model. You're right that scaling the parameter count up does have a dramatic difference in the driving feel.
Yeah, when your girlfriend gave a ride to me, she also told me that the 5x difference she really did feel.
All right, just leave the girlfriends out of the question, please. Stick with the moms. Okay, Luce?
So I asked this already, but to Omar and Yaman, I wanted to ask this to Machine as well, because he's much more of a of a trader. So I wanted to ask, what do you think will be Tesla reaction to the unveil of robotaxi, and what do you think will be Tesla reaction, stock reaction to the removal of EV incentives?
I think there's most likely to be a buy and hype into the robotaxi event, and then a sell off after. In terms of the event, because that's just usually what happens with their events. The EV tax credit removal, I think, is going to be a negative, at least initially, in terms of valuation or price movement on the stock. The sentiment, you may disagree, but I believe investors in general, their sentiment would be Tesla's going to lose money. And I think that would immediately be seen and I think that's impacting the stock price even now as polls change, right? If people truly believe Trump is going to get elected, the more likely that seems to be the case, I think it may actually devalue Tesla stock a little bit. But at the same time, this is, talking about talking out of both sides of my mouth. At the same time, I think markets in general, not Tesla, but for general, are more, positive to Trump winning than Kamala Harris. So it'd probably hard to see those effects. So I don't know with the EV tax credit. Like, I think we'll just have to wait and see. I don't know.
Luce?
So basically, you planned to sell some the day before of the reveal, basically, if I understand correctly.
I don't day trade. Like, I just try to have monthly, few month out sort of trades on stocks. So I would just, if Tesla goes down, I'm going to sell puts. And if it gets really high, overbought, I may sell calls. That's it. I'm just reacting to how it moves. I'm not trying to predict as much in shorter term, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you, Luce, for the questions. Okay. Machine?
But in terms of other risks, I mean, there's all sorts of international risks. Obviously, that can influence the market. So who knows what's going on?
Do you think it's the carry trade that's causing this move, volatility? I mean, VIX went up to 65.
It's
That's
insane.
incredible.
Yeah, my account earlier was like, the loss was like 3 times higher than it is now.
Yeah. And I literally told you last week, I said, you think you're playing, because you were starting to sound like, you're eating some free lunch. And I was like, your downside is if VIX surges, and that's literally what happened.
Well, I acknowledge that. And my point was still is that that ultimately, when there's theta decay and you get to the date of expiration, the volatility doesn't matter at that point. It matters now, right? In terms of, if you look at your account value, but until you close the position, it doesn't, matter at that point. So I'm not too worried about it unless I don't use margin. So if I had margin calls, then you would absolutely get screwed, right? Because you could force out a position at high volatility and lose more. I'm like less leveraged than index funds, so I feel quite fine.
Jeremy Siegel this morning called for an emergency rate cut of 75 basis points. What do you think the Fed should do?
Cut 25 to 50 next meeting. I don't think you need emergency. Why? Because unemployment went up.
Wow. You don't.
Inflation is not.
Listen, I'm really surprised. I gotta say this. I am really surprised by the unanimous call that the Fed does not have to do an emergency rate cut. I mean, we just had a massive move overnight. These things don't happen and then just like end. Usually this kind of indication of something. And it was a massive move on top of an unexpected rise in the unemployment rate. I mean, that employment report was across the board bad. And I was expecting, deterioration in the employment market. I was predicting it as soon as early as February. But even it was beyond my expectations. I didn't expect it would happen until like September. And it happened for the July report. And it's going to continue higher. There's no question about that, in my opinion. But what do you think?
Maybe so, but these interest rates themselves take a while to come into effect. So whether or not you do it right now or wait 6 weeks, I don't think is a huge deal, unless you think there's some financial institution that might go under and cause a cascade. Then that's the different level of concern. But I wouldn't take drastic action just because unemployment went up by itself. It's more about the cascade. If you're going to cause some massive global financial crisis again, then of course, I guess you got to do something. So I would hope they have their hands on top of this and understand what's going on at the Fed.
Did you know? I bet you didn't know this, but did you know that there were only 2 times the Fed cut more than 25 basis points for the first cut?
No one was that. I don't know. I didn't know.
if I remember correctly from what I read this weekend, it was 2001 and end of 2007, I think.
Those were great times.
Right?
Yeah, highly.
So only if they expect some sort of recessionary risk rising, they cut more than 25 basis points. And right now, I think 50 basis points is baked in for September, right?
I'm not paying too much attention. I just know everyone keeps saying the probabilities go up way high for that. So it seems like it.
Yeah. It's just amazing to me how fast the rhetoric changed. The Federal Reserve first cut interest rates by 50 basis points on September 18, 2007. This marked the beginning of a series of rate cuts in response to the emerging financial crisis. Yeah, amazing. Go ahead.
Obviously, there's also geopolitical risks in the Mideast. So I don't know. That's totally unpredictable. But that could, you never know, could get out of hand.
Yeah, we're paying some attention to that side of things. We have Ellie giving us an update, a few sentence update every day or so from the area. And I really appreciate that. His wife also joined us last week, I believe on Friday. And she is educated and experienced in political science, and she gave us her view as well. And if I look at the oil prices, the oil market is acting as if there won't be a huge escalation. You know, we might see battles here and there, but escalating into a World War III type of thing is not in the cards right now, according to the market at least. I haven't seen a view contrary to that from anybody so far. Luce?
So I wanted to say, no, sorry. Okay, I could not say that. So, in my opinion, the weakness of the current market is also dependent on the spending and inefficiency of the current government. Also, the fact that every 3 months there seems to be a new war coming. So a few months ago, I remember the Fed talking and saying that there wasn't nothing wrong with the economical data. They don't understand why the sentiment was so negative. Well, in my opinion, the current negative is finally at least the understanding of what is going wrong in general. So it was long overdue that there was some weakness coming. Price of groceries, price of energy, price of everything.
Okay, thank you. All right, this episode is sponsored by Joe Life. If you use the code TSLA Live via the link at the top of your screen, you get 5% off, and I get 5%, which that money goes towards improving this space. We also have Machine. Good news. We have our second sponsor as well. And so I'm going to be reading, alternating between those in the coming episodes. Go ahead.
Did you see either he got or someone got for him? Trump got a Cybertruck?
No, he was in a Cybertruck. He got into a Cybertruck with Kick streamer Adam Ross, who got a Cybertruck in a live stream. And Trump immediately went on the Cybertruck's massive inch display to pick out a song, and he picked California Dreaming, etc., etc. So yeah, I mean, he's kind of cozying up for those billions of dollars, it seems, or millions. I'm not that interested on that news, but do you have anything to say?
No, I just thought that was amusing.
Yeah, politics. Paul Ryan.
Yeah, I think his tone is changing a little bit, though. I don't know if you guys have noticed in the last days, he's been saying some pretty good things, but still trying to hold his position that they're not the best thing out there.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's nonsense. Like, you know, if somebody gives I don't want to talk about this. Wessex.
Yeah, I just noticed that Tucker Carlson just did a 1-hour review of the Cybertruck. It just came out on YouTube about an hour ago. I'll be watching it after we wrap up in a minute, but that should be interesting.
Machine. What do you think about the news that Tesla sold on the cathode side dry electrode manufacturing. Do you expect a big increase in Cybertruck production in the coming weeks?
I'm sorry, is this new news other than that they made a vehicle?
So I take that as you don't expect some sort of a massive ramp in Cybertruck production.
No, they just said they're like doing their testing phase. So they're not even producing them. It's just one. So I don't know. That's probably something that's going to take a while to ramp up. I wouldn't expect any significant contribution this year from DBE.
Okay. Omar, there's some news that US may ban Chinese software for use of L3, level 3 autonomy or higher on US roads. Did you hear about this?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So this might be coming in the next 2 weeks or so. Apparently it's in the works. Let's say it happens hypothetically. If it happens, would you expect a lashback from China against Tesla's FSD?
I would say that the US should not adopt this regulation. There is no product that exists from a Chinese company that's being sold in the US today, right? So they're kind of trying to preempt it, but we want to sell our software there. The city of Beijing just gave a permit to Mercedes to do level 4 deployment testing. So I don't see it as really necessary. Maybe if there was like actually, some Chinese software that was starting to dominate the market, but that doesn't really seem to exist today.
Okay. Tonight at 8 p.m., I'm going to hold my second AI-related space, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. We're going to talk about Neuralink video. We're
Looks
going to
like there's
have
breaking news. Google judge finds that the search engine violated antitrust law. They lost their antitrust lawsuit.
let me look at Google's stock price. Down 5% in the last 10 minutes. Google stock down 5% in the last 10 minutes. Sorry, it's down 3% in the last 10 minutes and down 5% for the day. Okay. The stock is down in the last 2 months or so. In the last month, down 17%. Omar, do you think this is going to be a huge thing? I mean, don't these things play out over several years? Google will probably appeal it, and then there will be some process.
We'll see what happens. I'm not sure where this really goes from here, but if the Department of Justice prevails and finds that the search engine is a monopoly, then they'll take steps to try and break up that monopoly in some way.
Interesting. All right, great. We have 10 minutes to go. I'm going to give the final word to Omar. Before that, remember 8 p.m. tonight, AI Space. We're going to talk about Neuralink videos. We have Sierra and Michelle coming to talk about it. Omar, what do you tell people who might be panicking about their Tesla shares today? All this macro headwinds brewing, lots of volatility, VIX surging. What do you tell those folks?
Well, certainly it's important to be aware of risks in the market and the economy to be able to understand them and stomach them. It's important to position yourself so that a day like this doesn't destroy your life. But at the same time, I just say thank you, Mr. Market, and thank you, God, for sending me this dip, honestly. It just all comes down to FSD for me. Tried the latest software. I think they're installing it on the test drive cars. It is really at the stage now where I think every consumer is going to want this. It's at the stage now where I'd be comfortable with my mom using it. And, like she's not a tech early adopter, right? So it really is something else. This is like what we've been dreaming for of years. No nag, no intervention most drives, and it's here. And you look at that Gigatexas data center, 100,000 GPUs, up from the current 35,000. It's wow, they're just getting started. We haven't really even seen where this paradigm can take us. We haven't even used the power of hardware for yet. So when you see this big imbalance in what the discussion is, where everyone's so negative and even the bulls are just beaten down and hopeless, you've really got this terrible situation in the economy and in the auto market that honestly doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon. And you just have this huge cloud of negativity, nobody really looking at this business as something that's going to grow like wild anytime soon. But then you just look at the technology and I mean, it just makes you want to accumulate as many shares as you can. So, compared to like machine strategy of trying to make options trade or something, buying and holding over time, although it's less leveraged, like for example, I was buying shares at 220 and at 200 and at 180. So I'm also losing money on those shares that I bought at 220, for example. But then if you kind of spread it out, don't blow all your money on the first day right before the dip even starts, but spread it out, maybe you get an average price of 200 or something. And whether it takes 3 years or 2 years or 5 years for this thesis to play out, you'll probably eventually do pretty well.
Great machine.
I just love the charlatans going on and on about buying the dip, and yet he publicly tries to mock me for selling puts, which is essentially buying the dip. Hypocrite.
Magic.
Hey guys, how's it going?
You're late.
Yeah, I was popping champagne. I'm up a lot of money today.
Okay, what do you have to say?
No, I'm just saying, hey, I'm trying to look. I know we're on opposite sides of the trade, but yeah, I've been even at 250. I mean, it's still like there's a lot of risk out there. I'm just telling everybody be careful. Don't buy every dip. Like this is a very complicated, big issue. Seems like the unwinding of a carry trade. So this is not your average. The Fed can lower interest rates and solve this problem. So just be very careful. Everybody needs to hedge. Don't buy options when the VIX is at 30 or up a lot. That's tough. That's trying to buy earthquake insurance right after an earthquake. It's not a good idea. You have to buy it before the earthquake. So everybody should be less risky, I think, than they are, and everybody just be careful and don't be concentrated in one position. A lot of these issues a lot of people are concentrated in the Mag 7 and all tech. So just be careful out there.
There's your financial advice of the day from your short seller telling you not to buy Tesla shares. Machine?
Well, I mean, I think he made some good points actually about diversification, not buying options when volatility is high. Those are all sound things. I just am really surprised.
Sound advice you're not taking for some reason.
Selling. Man, you don't understand the difference. Don't speak about options, Omar. You don't understand. Okay? Selling puts,
You
not buying
also don't
puts.
understand clearly.
Oh my God.
What he said is not necessarily good advice because there is no one volatility number, right?
True. Now, my point simply was going to be I do think it must have something to do with this yen trade because even Apple was down 10% at open. 10%? That's insane. I don't think people were just afraid of unemployment. When's the last time Apple went down 10% on non-Apple news?
I mean, Buffett sold it. This guy is the Oracle of Omaha. When he does something, people go, oh, maybe I should do that too.
Yeah, I totally forgot that.
Magic, what do you think is going to happen in the next few days?
It's hard to tell. I mean, it gets very crazy really fast, as you guys can see. So sometimes there's months that nothing happens, and there's a day or two where pretty much months or years of activity can happen in a few days. But I mean, look, there's a lot of geopolitical risk. we really got to look at what the Bank of Japan does and see how they react. And if the Fed can come in and save it, or if they're going to cut rates. I mean, look, it's a lot of things are kind of crazy. To be honest, I'm not sure. I sold a bunch of my long puts that I had. So, I'm kind of saying that it probably is going to reverse. The Fed's going to throw a lot of money at this problem, or the Bank of Japan. It may just be a pan.
You just said they can't cut.
Didn't
you just say they can't just solve the problem by cutting rates? Do you think they're going to do quantitative easing?
It doesn't. It's kind of like if you're 500 pounds, you can't just eat salad 2 times. You're going to try though, but like it's a big issue that you can't solve with just rate cuts, right? If it is the unwind of the carry trade, people really got to brushing up on that. Pretty much, Japan has been the first people that have been financing our gambling, not just the United States. This is the entire world has been borrowing money from Japan and taking that money and being speculative. And if that does unwind, it's going to be bananas. But like at a certain point, you can't just borrow money and just borrow money into infinitum and just kind of hope everything is well. Like
can you give me something specific? You just coming up here and wasting time with general statements. And okay. I know Machine said those are good comments, but Machine is a low bar. So can you give me some specific prediction that we can hold you to in the next few weeks or so?
I think the market will continue down in the next few weeks. I think volatility will recover in the next few days. It's gonna offset, and then if there is some geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, which I think we're all projecting, then it picks up again, and so that's it.
So if the market is going to continue down, and you think there is some downside risk to Tesla, then why did you sell your put options on Tesla?
So I switched it from a put options to inverse ETF because options are priced on both the price of the underlying security plus volatility. So if volatility spikes up insanely, then I take the chips off the table and wait for it to go back, wait for it to go down again, wait for everybody to get complacent, load up on puts, and then do it again. I just buy cheap. That's it.
Okay. Omar, can you give us some positivity to close off? I don't want to close off with magic.
Well, the worse it gets, the more pressure there will be on the Fed to cut. And then maybe we won't have to cut our Tesla prices so much.
Wow, this is sunshine all around today. All right, on that note, tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have an AI space. I will chat with you guys there. Take care, everybody, and chat soon.